Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create this necklace, or at least this part and the pendant. The pendant's going to look a little different because that I need to still make for the tutorial, of course, but this is basically what I'm going to be showing you how to make today. So let's get started with the pendant. So you're going to need a sheet of white clay, and you're also going to need two chosen textures. Now I'm going to be using two textures from my Etsy shop. I'm using my wood grain textures, and I'm also using my pebble and moss texture. Now the ones that you buy on the Etsy shop are of course much neater than this. They're all in nice neat squares and things like that, but these are my original ones that I made. So I'll start with the wood grain one. And this one I like because it gives almost like a bamboo effect to it. With this necklace over here, I was trying to go for almost like an Asian kind of look to it. So you'll give your stamp a pretty good spray of water or a light brush of cornstarch, depending on whether your clay can take water or not. And then just press the edge in over here, give you a bit of a grip, and lightly spray the surface of your clay to prevent your fingers from sticking. And again, if your clay doesn't like water, just use a light brush of cornstarch. And you can use any clay for this. I'm going to be using Primo White today, but you should be able to use any clay. Just make sure that it is white. It always has to be white. Okay, there we are. Then you'll bring over your acrylic roller and give it a light roll. Now while you're doing this, you want to make sure that your clay doesn't lift out of your texture stamp, because if it does, you want to stop rolling, otherwise you'll get a ghost image. Okay, then I'll lift that out of the texture stamp, and you can see a texture that we've got there. Then you want to dry your work surface, just like that. And you also want to give your clay a light dab down as well. Then you'll bring over your tissue blade and just trim away the edges. Now the edges of a texture, depending on how well you rolled it, generally aren't as good as the ones towards the middle. So I'm just going to trim away a little bit of excess texture there. And so we now have a nice sheet. So it kind of does look like bamboo. Now you'll do the same for your pebble stamp. Okay, so there we are, got both of our textures now. So now what we want to do is we want to colour these separately before we join them in our texture. So what I've got is going to be doing the same technique for both of these, just in different colours. So we're going to have this one in the brown and this one in the green. So we'll do the green first. So you're going to need some alcohol ink, and I'm using Bottle. What you're going to do is you're going to open that away from your clay, so not to get crumbles all over your clay. And just drop a few drops onto your clay. And then just take your brush and make sure to spread it all over the clay. It's very important that you get in all the gaps and everything. So you might need a little bit more alcohol ink. And this part's quite important. And just dab to make sure that you get it into the gaps. So I'll just bring over that ink again and dab a little bit more over here. Make sure you don't have any white areas. Okay, so there's a little white area over there, a little bit over here. Okay, then what you want to do is you want to leave this to soak into the clay. You want it to stain the clay's surface, so you'll want to leave that for about 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm just going to lift that off of the tile and I'm going to put that off on its own. And then I'm going to bring over the white pebble one that we have here, and I'm going to use this alcohol ink to do the exact same thing with it. Okay, so while the pebble one is drying, this one has been soaking, and so you can see that it doesn't look very wet anymore, which means that it's soaked in pretty well. So now we can move on to using some pastels. So I'm going to be using this set. It looks like this. And I'm going to open that up. I'm just doing it off camera because it's quite big area. And so here you can see it, we have a set. And so I'm going to be using a few different greens. And I'll just grab some of those. And then I'm also going to be using some browns. And there'll be some crossover between the colours, so some of the brown will go with the green and some of the green might go with the brown. So there we are. Don't want any of the red ones though, or the really red ones. I'll put that aside. Okay, and so most of these are going to go with the pebble one, but I do want these ones. These kind of greenish hued browns. Then I'll bring over my craft knife, and I'm going to take this colour, which is what I want to be my main colour, and I'm going to shave that over the surface. Okay, and I'm going to take this dark brown, I'm just going to shave a little bit of that to give it a bit of a darkish hue. I also want this kind of green brown, not too much of that. And I want this lighter green, and I mix it all together to make one colour really. Just a little bit of this lighter one. Okay, and I don't think I want that, it's too blue. Okay, then I'll bring over the brush again, and you want to have that cleaned off from the last one, and you're going to dapple it into place. Don't brush, you want to dapple. And you want to be working into the crevices. And we're probably going to have to put a bit more pastel on. But just dab it into the surface. Okay, and then once you've finished with that, you can start brushing some of the excess powder over the surface to get it into other areas that don't have as much powder. So just brush across. I'm brushing in one direction so that I can end up with a pool of powder down this end. And then I'll scoop up that powder and bring it around. The same down this end. There we go. Grab that and pop that onto the end of the brush and dapple it into the areas that I don't think have enough powder. Okay. Just gonna pop that back on and brush it over the surface. Okay, then we want to give a blow to get rid of most of the excess. Okay, and then I'll move these greens out of the way and move this out the way and let that go sit. And I'll just bring over a wet wipe and just quickly wipe away most of this. Okay. And I'll bring over our brown, which has also been soaking, and we'll work with that one now. So I'm going to bring over the browns over here so you can see what I'm doing. And I want to start with this one. And I want that one to be my main base colour. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use the pastels as almost like an antiquing medium rather than paint. So that this can get into all the crevices, and that will, because we're going to be rubbing away some of the powder, quite a bit of the powder actually, the surface lot, and that's why we want the ink to stain the surface, because we're going to be seeing that later on. And I'll show you what I mean in a little while. Okay, so there we are, we've dappled on enough, or spritzed on a little bit. Then we're going to take our brush and we're going to dab that over the surface. And you can see that it completely alters the colour, but this is what our antiqued area is going to look like. So the crevices are going to remain this colour. Well, we're going to get the alcohol ink back. I'm just brushing that powder back onto the surface so that I can go in for another round. And the nice thing about the alcohol inks is that they kind of remain tacky, so the powder will stick to them rather nicely. Okay, then we're just going to brush off that excess powder and blow that away. Okay, and I'll move this off to the side and pack those pastels away and clean up our work surface. Okay, so one last thing I want to do is you can check the colour of what it's going to be before you actually cut out your stuff. So I've wiped away a little bit of the powder on the surface over here, and you can see what it's going to be. So I've decided it's a little bit of a too brighter green for my liking. So I'm going to bring over that alcohol ink that I used for the pebbles, and I'm just going to dab a bit of that onto the surface. And I'm going to dapple that around. And that will just give it a little bit of a more just a little bit more wooded look rather than this really strong bright green, because I don't want it to be a really strong bright green. So it's nice to come every now and then and check what it's actually going to look like by just rubbing the surface over there. And so we'll dab that alcohol ink around, and then we'll lift that up and put that over to the side. Okay, and then we'll bring it over, and I've just got some of that dark green again and some of that dark brown, and we're just going to dab a little bit of that over the surface again just to get our antique back, because when you pop the alcohol ink back on, it kind of removes a bit of that powder. So you just want a bit of that. But it's nice because then you can adjust your colour a little bit. And then just dab that over the surface, and that will get us set for the next lot. Well, next step. Okay, and I'm just going to brush that excess away. The nice thing is, well, if you're doing this while the alcohol ink is still tacky, the powder sticks really nicely. We'll get rid of that. Move that out of the way. Clean up the work surface like that. And then we can move on to creating our bead. So what we're going to do is start with this one, and I'll bring over my flexible tissue blade, and I'm going to start by cutting it into sections, in fairly large sections, just like that. And pick it up, pop it over to the side like that. And now this one is splitting a little bit over here. So I'm going to bring over a sheet of white clay that was run out on the thinnest setting of my pasta machine, and I'm just going to pop that on the back. And you want that as thin as you can get it, because it's just supposed to keep this from falling apart. Okay, we'll just wipe that out the way and trim away that white. Because we want to pop that back into our white pot. And then we're set to go with this one. So this one I'm also going to cut into sections. There we are. And I'll pick that up and move that off to the side. Okay. And then we'll bring this over and this over. And I'm just going to trim up this one's top. So there's a nice clean edge. And I'm going to pop that up against here. Just like that. Okay. Then I'll bring over this one. And now actually, to make this easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a wet wipe to wet the surface over here so that these slide around nicely. And that makes popping them into place much easier. Okay, and I'll just re-wet the surface over there. And I'll re-wet, and it makes popping them into place so much easier. Here we are. And actually, just want to move that out of the way, because I did something a little bit wrong there. I actually want to place that one there. Okay. And you can see that it dries up quite quickly, so you have to keep wetting it. I just want to pop this into place and try to avoid showing any white areas. And I'll bring this one over, pop that into place, wipe, and I'll bring this one over. And there we have a little bit of a white bit there. Just smoosh that into place. Okay, and then I just want to trim this one, this edge. Pop that into place up here. And then pop that there. It's not meant to create a perfectly rectangular piece. It's just meant to pop all these pieces together so we can take our beads out of them. Okay. And then we can kind of smush it into place and whatever you want to do. Now what we want to do is we want to prepare another white sheet for these to go onto. Okay, and this is a sheet of white that was run out on the 5th set of my pastel machine, the 7th being my thickest. What we're going to do is we're gently going to lift this up and place it onto the white. Okay, and this will keep all of the pieces together. Now what we want to do is just want to pop that around there, and we want to trim up these edges. And all of these pieces, just take them off the white and pop them all together in a little thing. And keep those because you can use those in many different projects. Leftover projects, that is. And you want to trim away all that excess white. just like that. And we'll bundle those up and move them over there. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to just remove any white areas that we might be seeing. So I'm going to gently press these pieces together to make sure that they stick. And you don't really want to be flattening your texture, so just be careful of that. Okay, and I'm just going to lift it and make sure that I am getting it to stick together. Then I'll bring over some brown powder and I'm going to pop that near the gaps over here, because that's where the white's going to show up, if white does show up, which will be around the seams. And you want to cover up that white. So just sprinkle a bit of powder around there. And that is why we haven't rubbed off the powder yet, because I want to make sure to get rid of any white spots. Okay. Here we are, and that will make it look much better. Blow away any excess. And now lift that off the tile and have a look from both sides to check. And also just flip it around to see if those seams are sticking together properly. And they are, so that's good. Okay, then I'll wipe up my work surface and we can now start wiping away the powders. So you'll take a wet wipe and just wrap it around your finger like that. Then take 99% alcohol and give that a spritz on the end of your finger over there, and then gently start wiping over the surface of your texture. And you want to be wiping, you don't want to be pressing. If you press, you'll get rid of the texture. Okay, and your end's going to very quickly get dirtied up, so just swap to a clean end each time. And you can see that the textures, the pattern's starting to come through. Now you won't be able to get the exact same colours every single time. Just want to say that quickly. So I was trying to get something very similar to the one that I showed you at the beginning of the tutorial. But as you can see, it's very hard to get the exact same colours every single time. And just swap to a clean patch every now and then. And give it a light spray of alcohol every now and then, because that really helps remove the excess pastel and things like that. Okay, and so this is what our two textures are going to look like, which is quite nice. And we'll remove some more later on when we sand, of course, but we want to remove most of it now because it will just make our lives easier when we come to do sanding. And just be careful that you don't remove too much. If you remove too much, it's going to expose the white, and so you're going to lose that effect. So just be careful not to remove too much. And you also want to be careful not to cross the colours. So you can see I have a little bit of brown over here. Just go back and clean that up. And you'll do that across the entire surface of your texture. Right, so here it is, finally finished. So you can see that it's really quite nice, but we do want to get it dry. So there's a little bit of alcohol on the back here that I'm just going to wipe off, and I want to wipe the front over here. And then you can see that it's still quite wet, so I'm just going to dab away as much as I can. Just like that. And now just another thing, when you're wiping, you want to make sure, or at least try to avoid not contaminating your colours. So you don't want to wipe the green across the brown or the brown across the green, because you don't want getting those colours mixed up. Now the reason we didn't wipe it before we put the two sheets together was because you get pastel in amongst the gaps over here, and you can't fill in the seams with the powder to make sure that the seams don't appear as much as usual. So it's much better to just rub it afterwards, but it does mean that you need to be careful not to get your colours contaminated. But that's pretty good, and it's all holding together pretty well as well. So now we want to let that dry for about 10 minutes before we cut out our bead. So I'm going to pop that over to the side and we are going to work on the back. Okay, so what we're going to do for the back is I want to use Lisa Pavelka's Zenful stamp, and I really want to use this area because we're going to carry on with that Asian feeling with it. So I'm going to use that white polymer clay that we collected from the sides of our stamp earlier, so you can see we have a little bit of powder contamination on it, but that's fine for this purpose. And I'm going to run that through our pasta machine on the 5th setting. Okay, I'm just getting that into the right shape, and I will bring over my water bottle and give this area a good spray. Pop that over the surface, give another spray to prevent it sticking to my fingers, and then press it in from one side to the other, working my way over so that I don't create air bubbles. Okay, and this is what our back is going to look like. Okay, and I will lift that up. And again, you want to dry that up. Okay, then we are going to just gently trim up these sides, and this will basically cover the back of one pendant. Okay, so I'm going to bring over my alcohol ink, again, same colour. And I'm going to drip this in certain areas. Okay, I'll just pop the cap back on that. And I'm going to dab that around. And I've got a little bit of the green alcohol ink on here, which is good, because I want to be combining the bottle with the caramel. So I'm going to pop some bottle on, and again we want it to stay in the clay, and I'll dab that around, and then I will clean my brush off to get rid of most of the alcohol ink on it, and bring over the caramel again, and I'm going to drop that all over the surface because I want it on the green areas and on the brown areas, because I don't want the green to be a strong green. So I'll drop that onto my brush so that I can dab that around, so that these two colours kind of blend together. Okay, then pop that away, you'll clean off the brush, and then I'm going to bring over a dark green and a dark brown, and I'll brush the brown over because that's the one that I want to emphasize the most. And I'll also brush over the green. Bring over the brush again, and we will dab those into place. Okay. And I've done this while the alcohol ink's still wet, because then the powder really sticks, which is what I want. I'll just dab a little bit more of this, and a little bit more of this. And then just brush over to get rid of excess powder, and then brush that powder back on so you can brush it around again. There we are. Okay, want to do before I rub it, like I did last time, is I want to bring over my roller and I want to very lightly roll over the surface so that the texture isn't so deep. I need a very light texture. So I'm not actually pressing on the roller, I'm just causing it to roll across the surface, and the weight of the roller is flattening this out for me. So if I press, it's going to flatten out too much. So I'm just getting it to roll and use its weight to do it for me. There we go. Because I don't want to flatten it completely. And then I'll wipe that one too. And so I'll bring over a clean wet wipe. And I'll lay it on the surface and rub. And because I'm not worried about colour contamination, I can do this. And I'll just lightly spray with the alcohol. Pop that over the surface and I'm going to rub. Okay. And then start rubbing on it. It's a lot of pastel here for me to get rid of. Okay, and I can see the pattern starting to come out. Now again, I don't want to rub away too much, so I'm having a very light touch. And the antique parts are supposed to be the letters. And I don't want it that dark. So I'll give it one more spray. And gently wipe. And these areas that are white, I'm not too worried about. I'm going to bring over my brush, which I'm just cleaning off quickly. And I'm going to pop a little bit of this caramel colour on. And I'm going to dab it onto those white spots. So this is what you can do on the other piece. If you have any white spots that you think are way too white, you can always just take the colour that you want to that you have in those spots and then wipe that over the surface to get it to cover up those white spots. Oops. And I'll just dab this. Okay. And that's ready for me to use now. And remember again that we are going to be sanding the front and the back, so we don't have to worry too much about it. So I'll take that, lay it aside, and clean up over here, and then we can start assembling our bead. Okay, so let's start creating our project, or at least the bead side of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using this cutter. Now this is available on my Etsy shop if you want to go and have a look. But this is the cutter that I'll be using. And now I need to decide where I want to take my bead. So I want to take it about there. And then I'm going to press in, cut it out, lift that out the way. And touch up these areas where it kind of cracked a little bit. Then bring over my tissue blade, lift that up. I'm just going to go around this end and press in the sides where sometimes you get a little bit of bits from the cutters. And then look at it straight, and if I can see some areas bulging over here, just bring over my cutter and just trim it a little bit. Because what I did was when I cut it, I pressed these edges back in because it had cracked just a tiny bit. So by me doing that, it's no longer a straight cut down. It's the back's coming out a little bit more than the front. So the cut that we made with the cutter was perfect, but the texture cracked a little bit, so I need to press that back in, and so I need to just play around with the shape a little bit. There we go. Okay, so just make sure that you're happy with your shape before you do anything. Okay, and we're going to apply the backing after we've baked it. So that's all we're going to do for now. And I'm going to lay it on my tile, and I want to be able to look straight down on it and not see any white poking out from the texture. So just make sure that that is what it looks like. If it doesn't, you need to just press in this part a little bit more. Then I'm going to bring over my doming surface, and I'm just using this old candle holder. I'm just going to gently tap this onto the surface to get it to stick. And this is why I am not going to be popping the backing on yet, because you get a shiny side and I don't really want this to be shiny, so we'll apply the backing after. So there you are, that's what it looks like. It looks very similar to this one, except that the colours are quite a bit stronger, which is nice because it will make the pendant stand out against this. And again, we are going to sand it just a tad because I do want to expose the white just a tad more, but I've got rid of most of it, so I can pop it into bake, and then we can do some sanding at the back, and we want to clean up the sides as well. So I'll pop that in the oven for half an hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and in the meantime I'm going to make some other pendants with the leftover pieces. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for those to bake, I want to show you what you will do with the leftovers, because you are going to end up with leftovers from these pieces. So one thing I want to try, so I just want to take these pieces, which are quite small, and put them off to the side. And I want to take these and just trim off these ends that are kind of spindly. And I want to bring over my acrylic roller, and I want to roll this flat and see what happens. As you can see, some interesting things are happening. Getting some cracks and crackles and things. So this I probably will use for the back of my pendants or something like that. But you could turn it into a technique. You could actually just make an entire sheet like this if you wanted to. Gives it an entirely different look. So I'm going to pick that up, pop that through the pasta machine on my 5th setting. Then I'm going to go down one to my 4th. Then I go down one more to my 3rd. There we go, you can see that it's quite nice, and I think I might stretch it even more. I'm going to go down to my 2nd thinnest setting and pop it through. And there we go, so we've got a nice sheet that I can actually use for the back of some of my pendants, which is nice because I want one pendant to have that backing, and then we can use this for the backing of some of our other ones. Okay. And I'm going to grab these bits, which are kind of small and insignificant, and I'm going to just bunch those all together into one piece and roll it up. And I'm going to roll it out like that, and I'm going to twist, and I'm going to roll again and twist, just to get all of those lines intertwined in there. I'm going to squish it up together, really smushing it up. Okay, and then I'm going to flatten out this edge over here and get this into a rectangular shape so that I can take slices from it. Okay, and I'm just going to use my acrylic roller to square that up nicely. And then I bring over my thin tissue blade, which is the one that I like to use for slicing. And I'll slice out some pieces. So you can see that those pieces are quite interesting as well. And you don't even have to use it in the project that we're doing today. This can just be, you know, separate. So that's the dog. So that's what I did with the leftovers. And so when those other pieces are out of the oven, I will use these two sheets to create our backing. And so I'm going to bring over some Sculpey bacon bond, and this is what I'm going to use to help stick this on. So I'll just get rid of that hair that's over there. And I'll pop some of that bacon bond on, and you only want a little bit, so I'm just going to put a streak down there and then smooth it over the surface to get it to spread, because you don't want your piece sliding around. You just want this enough to help you bond the two pieces together. I'm just going to add a little bit up there, but it's really important not to put too much bacon bond on, otherwise it slips and slides and it's just horrible. Okay, so just enough to slick the surface. Okay, then we'll bring over our sheet and we'll pop that down and then gently press it onto the back. Like that. And then I like to curl it over the edges so that I can see exactly where I need to cut. And then I'll bring over my knife, and I'm going to bring over my craft knife actually. Here we go. And I'll start from this end and just cut around the edge. And now I'm not doing a precise cut yet, I'm just kind of slipping around the outside. There you go, because I want to save this to hopefully make a bail. Okay, then I'll really press this on, and then I can properly trim the outside. Okay. Then I'll use this to like really smooth it against the edge. Get that off. And now I'm being careful with my hands, so don't worry. I'll use my finger to brace that there. I'm using a somewhat blunt knife for this so that I don't accidentally cut myself. And there we are. So I'll get rid of those little bits. And yeah, I've got quite a nice interesting back. And then I'll smooth these edges because I want these two to bond together quite nicely, just like that. And we'll do a smear around the edges as well. And then I also want to just gently rub against the back just to get rid of fingerprints if there are any. just seeing, yeah, that's good. Okay, and then I'll put that to the side, and I'll bring over this piece that I had left, and I'll bring over my tissue blade, and I'll just trim up there, and trim up there, and then we've got a piece that we can use. Just gonna cut this section out. And I'll bring over a skewer. I'm going to do that on this end. And gently, I'm going to wrap that around the skewer. Okay, and I'll press on that join. And then I can trim that to where I need it. And this can be a little hard because it refuses to stick to the wood, which is good and bad at the same time, depending on what step of the process you are in. So we've got a round, and I'm going to bring this over and want it to hang that way. So then I'll grab the seam that's over there, and just press that together there, and I'll pop that in the middle, and then get rid of the skewer from out of it, and then I use the thin end of the skewer to actually press it and roll it onto the unbaked clay of the back, so that I form an oval rather than a round, because I don't want this to be too thick. Okay, and just for added security, I'm going to take a little bit of bacon bond and pop that onto the end of my skewer, and then pop that in there so that we can bring that seam together. And I'll just rub that on the other side. Okay, just checking. Just want to make sure that it bonds properly, because there's a bit of pastels involved here, so, and the pastels act almost like a repel. They kind of repel adhesion, so I'm just gently popping a little bit of bacon bond on to make sure that it sticks, because the last thing you need is your bail falling off. That would just be a pain. Okay, just want to make sure that this end sticks too. And this bacon bond's quite transparent, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Okay, and just clean off the skewer back there. And see how it looks. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to just bring over some of that bottle alcohol ink, and I'm going to pop a little bit onto the end of my skewer. I'm going to just dab that around the edge over here to get rid of that really bright white. And I'll do the same on this side. Just pick a little more here. Okay. And I'll also do that on the translucent, just to get it not such a bright white colour. You want it to kind of blend in. Okay, there we are. Then I also want to bring over the caramel and dot over that surface so that we get a brown look as well, because now we've got a bright green. So I just dab a little bit onto the edge there, and we'll pop that on so that it blends in, which is quite important. You don't want seams and things. Okay. And then pop it on this end, and then we can pop this back in the oven for half an hour, and then I can show you how to clean up those edges, because we need to do a little bit of a smear on the edge. Okay, so that's that one. I'll pop backings and possibly bails on the other ones, bake them for half an hour, and then I'll show you the next step. Oh, and when you bake them, just pop them onto a piece of, onto a cloth or something like that so that they stay domed, because you can't put that back onto a doming surface because of the bail over here. Okay, so they are out of the oven and ready to go. So before I do the smear along the sides, I want to actually see how bright these are going to be, because it will help me gauge what colour I want to put around the sides over here. So I want to give them a little bit of a sand. So I'm going to bring over a polishing cloth, and this is my 400 grit. And I want to gently sand. And it doesn't take much, as you can see. Just want to give it a little bit of a sand to see how bright you're going to want it ultimately. And just be careful not to over sand it, because it's very easy to do that. So you can see that it's already brightening up. So I want to actually put black around the edges, but I want to see if after sanding it's going to look a little bit too light for that. So I'm just double checking that. And so you want to start with a nice coarse grit so that it's quick and easy for you to sand this off, because you're basically just removing powder. And this is why you don't sand mixed media, of course, because it comes clean off. But the goal was for the alcohol ink to stain the clay, and so you can see that it has stained it, and we have very few pure white areas, and even the areas where they look like it's pure white, it's not actually. So if I bring this over, you can see that this one's a bit more yellow, but other than that the colour is actually quite different, and so you can see that the difference between these two is quite radical. So I'm going to give these two over here a sand to see what they look like, and then we can do a smear around the edge. Okay, so here they are now that I've finished baking them, and you can see that I got 3 pendants out of them, and then the leftovers were what I showed you. So now we want to clean up these backs, and you can see that the backs are pretty shiny. So I'll bring over that one that we made, this one, and we are going to pop it on the back of this one. Okay, so now we are ready to do this smear. And so I've done it on the edges of these ones, so you can see. And it makes a little bit of a difference when you look at it straight up from there, but when you look at it on the side it makes quite a big difference. So we will now do that with this one. So you're going to need some black Primo clay, and you want to roll that into a log, pop that onto the side of your bead, and then smear it along the edge, just like that. And then I'll just patch up that area that didn't get covered very well. Just roll a piece and pop it on. Okay, then use your fingers to squish it onto the clay and to tidy it up, smooth it and all of that. And get rid of fingerprints. Okay, and just make sure that you cover up all of those white areas. And then also, because we have texture here, you sometimes get clay in the texture, so just go and poke out those pieces because you don't want them sitting there. Then you'll go and smear the other sides until you have covered all the sides. And then once you've covered all the sides, just make sure to go back and get rid of fingerprints by smoothing them off. Then pop them in the oven for another half an hour at Primo's recommended temperature. And then I can show you how to finish sanding them. And pop Renaissance wax on them, and then we can actually get onto stringing. Okay, so now we are ready to start sanding. So I've already sanded 2 of the beads so you can see what they're going to look like after sanding. And so you can see that it's nice and shiny. And this one too. And the back's been sanded a little bit as well, not too much because you don't want to rub off this powder. And the back of this one's also been sanded, so you can see it. There's a massive difference now that we've sanded off most of that black stuff. So those have been sanded. Now I want to sand this one. And you go sand the sides, back and front. And now I'm going to start with the 400, but you want to be careful with the 400 because you don't want to be sanding off too much of that powder. So just give it a light brush with the 400 just to get rid of most of those particles, and then sand the sides. And I'm using polishing papers from Fire Mountain Gems, and I much prefer them to sandpaper because they don't make my teeth chatter, because I dislike sanding papers, just sandpaper, because it just doesn't give me a good feeling when I'm sanding with it. And these ones are nice because they're kind of like cloths. So they bend and are movable. So that's all I would do with the 400. And now I move up to a 600. And I'm going to be much more vigorous with this one. I'm going to sand the edges, front and the back, and I'll continue up until I reach the 8000. And then I can show you how to pop some Renaissance wax on here to seal it all up. And then we can begin our string. Okay, so this has now been sanded, and so you can see it's got a nice shine to it, as well as the sides and the back. So now what we want to do is we want to bring over some Renaissance wax and an old polishing cloth. And I'm just going to gently grab a little bit of that Renaissance wax and brush that over the surface to seal the top bit. You don't have to worry about the cracks or crevices because nothing's going to rub those without doing it on purpose, basically. So just seal the top part, and the sides you want to just give a nice rub just to make sure that they are nice and shiny. And then you also want to do the back over here, and you'll do that with all of your beads, of course. And then if you have a buffing machine, you can go and buff these up and they'll look really nice, but you can also do it by hand. So I'll do the same with the rest of the beads, and then you'll let them rest for about 10 minutes to let the Renaissance wax harden, and then we can move on to stringing. Okay, so they've been buffed with the Renaissance wax, and so you can see that they're very shiny now, which is quite nice against the contrast of the really gritty background where the pastel is still inside the grooves. So that's really nice. So now I'm going to pick one for our necklace, and I think I'm going to go with this one, which is our original one. And you're going to need some brass headpins. So here's a brass headpin. And just snip off the head. Grab your round nose pliers and create a loop. And now you're going to need to make a few things. So I've already assembled a part of the necklace. This is half of the necklace. You're going to need some of these bamboo beads. You're going to need some jump rings, and you're going to need this finding. I can't remember for the life of me what it was called. I'll go research what it's called. Forgetting what it's called. But anyway, you'll need that. You'll also need a bunch of beads. I've got these lovely coconut beads, I do believe they're called. And I've got these Russian Serpentine and some bone beads. And so you're going to need to make a few of these. You're also going to need to just make one of these empty ones with just 2 loops on the head, and the loops need to be able to fit through the bail on your bead so that you can reach to the other side, and that is how we're going to hang it. So I'm going to show you how to create these. And what you'll need is some beads, and you'll create the loop like I showed you before, string on your beads in the pattern that you like them, like that. Then you get a feel for this, but just cut off the amount that you need for another loop. That's a little much. There. And then create a loop. Just like that. Now I'm just closing that. There we go. And once you've done that, you can start assembling your necklace. So, the first thing you want to do is make a whole bunch of these. Then pop your head pins through your hole and grab it with your pliers so it doesn't get away. Then pop a jump ring through, and then one of these. And I've got all these beads off of Fire Mountain Gems. Okay, and then once you've done that, you'll need another jump ring. Let me just grab that. And on that jump ring, you'll want to pop on your 2 strands that you've already constructed. So that's the one strand. We also need another one, and I'll show you how to construct that. So you'll need your beads and your pieces, and so I'm just showing you the pattern that you'll pop it in. There we go. Just trying to get that across so that you can see what the pattern is. And then you'll just link those with jump rings. So just like this, in the pattern that you want it. Now this is the pattern that I like and the beads that I want, but you don't have to use the same beads, obviously. So choose beads that you like. I mean, I've done in this really nice Asian jungle theme that I went for, but you can do it in any colours you want. You could go for like pink and purple if you wanted to. So don't be constrained by what I'm doing. Play around with your colours and see what you can do. So you can see I'm just linking these all up. And it's pretty quick to do once you've got all of your links made. So I like to make all the links and then assemble the necklace. Okay, and now let me just see on this side what it has to do. Because I've got these wood beads sitting in such a way. So I'm just looking at that off camera. Okay. So this one needs to go on like that. There we go. Set that. Yeah. Okay, just checking that. Sorry for my mumbling. And we'll open that up. And string that on. There we go, so that should sit right. Just like that. Okay, and then on the other end, you will attach jumprings. So I just want to make sure that's sitting right. Your string on your jump ring and attach it to your ending. Just like that. And then you'll attach the final part of your clasp, and you'll basically do that for the other end of the necklace. Okay, so let me just hold that out and see if it's holding the way I want it to. Yep. So then I'll turn that around, and you can see that the pendant has a little bit of movement, which is nice. And unlike last time, where the pendant was a little bit more pale, I made this one a bit brighter so that it stands out against the necklace, so that it's the brightest part of the necklace. And so basically that's it for this project. And so I've got 2 more beads over here that I'll do something with. Not sure what exactly, but I'll probably turn them into pendants as well. And so I do hope that tutorial was helpful to you, and if it was, please do let me know, as that is always helpful to me. And please do send in photos of what you do using this tutorial. You can send it in through the website, Facebook, anywhere you can contact me and send in the photos would be great, as I always love seeing what you guys do. And as always, I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.